I remember it well, as my master returned home to find his beloved Shen lying on the floor, and then he saw her kill her. Saki wasted no words, and during the struggle my cage was broken. I leapt to Saki's face, biting and clawing, but he threw me down to the floor and took one swipe with his katana, slicing my ear. Then he was gone, and I was alone. Here's your look at the NECA Toys Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the 1990 movie, Oroku Saki, and Hamato Yoshi. Long before becoming the proud patriarch of his own mutant ninja family, Splinter was once the devoted pet of Japan's finest shadow warrior, Hamato Yoshi. Mimicking Yoshi's movements from his cage, Splinter learned the mysterious art of ninjutsu. Yoshi's fiercest and most dangerous rival was Oroku Saki, whom became obsessed with winning the affection of Yoshi's beloved Tang Shen. Fearing Saki's vengeful jealousy, Shen, Yoshi, and Splinter sought refuge in America, but soon the sadistic Saki viciously struck down the star-crossed lovers, orphaning the wounded Splinter. Saki then vanished, his face scarred by Splinter's desperate defensive counterattack. First things first, I'd like to thank the folks over at NECA Toys that provided the samples of Oroku Saki and Hamato Yoshi that we could have a look at in this review. If you're looking to pick up the figures for yourself, they should be available right now in retail stores and online. And for comparisons of sizes, even though Yoshi doesn't turn into Splinter in the movie, they go back to the original comic roots. He does certainly have Splinter as a pet, so we can bring him in at least for some comparisons of sizes. And don't worry, if you're wondering, yeah, Splinter is one of the included accessories. Not this Splinter. His original little pet Splinter is included in this set. And of course, we already know the fate of Oroku Saki. He eventually becomes the Shredder, so of course we can bring in the Shredder for some comparisons of sizes. Oroku Saki before the Shredder and Oroku Saki as he is the Shredder are roughly going to be the same height to one another. And for other comparisons of sizes, splitting the rivals down the middle, we can bring in the leader of the Ninja Turtles. Here the two figures are next to Leonardo. For the accessory end of things, I did my best to try to split things up that were dedicated to each of the characters, because there are specific accessories that are for Hamato Yoshi, and on the other end of things, there's accessories specifically for Oroku Saki. Then along the middle, you sort of have a pair of weapons. Each one of the weapons come in identical pairs, except for one, and then of course you can then split those off and decide for yourself which accessories will go with each character. Starting though first with those accessories, some of which, by the way, you may recognize as ones that were packaged with earlier NECA movie releases, like the 2-pack Foot Soldiers and the one that was the Capture Splinter. Also came with a lot of these accessories as well. Starting first, you get yourself a matching pair of staffs. The staffs are identical to ones that we've gotten before, all molded here in, I'm guessing to be black plastic, although that little lip of plastic may tell me otherwise. It almost could have been maybe a lighter color of plastic that they've painted after the fact. There's a little lip of plastic, yeah, I have on the one side of the staff. But other than that, yeah, nice looking staffs that you can have displayed along with the figures. I probably would go the route, I think, of displaying Hamato Yoshi with more tamer sparring weapons and giving the more sharper weapons to Oroku Saki. You can also use these, I suppose, as chopsticks as well. I've never really been really good with chopsticks. So you get a pair of staffs. What else do we have here? We have a couple of Katana Blades. And yes, you would be probably hard-pressed to see if there's a difference between the two. The blades are exactly the same, painted in silver color. Silver guards and more of a matte black hilt. Maybe would display one of these, I think, with Oroku Saki. Next up, you get a couple of tonfas. Tonfas are basically batons, and you get a pair of those. Again, they don't seem to be different from one another. The only difference that comes with the accessories and them not being pairs are the nunchucks, which we'll look at in a second. So you get a couple of tonfas. You get a couple of axes. And I'm not really sure if there's actual technical term for a ninja axe. I tried to look online and didn't find anything. But the axes are the same ones that we got included, I think, with both the Foot Soldier 2-pack and the one of Capture of Splinter. Mentioned, I'm sure, already in that review, but I'll reiterate it here. I love even the attention of detail that they've welded. You can see where the blade has been welded to the rest of the axe head. I really like that. That's a little small touch of detail, even like a little scorch mark from where they would have welded the pieces together. You can see that on both sides. it's, again, those little attentions of detail. I really appreciate when NECA goes all out like that. So you get a couple of those. And then not quite matching, you get also a pair. I guess pair could still mean two. You get yourself a pair of katanas, a pair of nunchucks, correct me. Now, the nunchucks are different from one another. This one here is just attached by a plastic cord, whereas this one actually does have a real functioning chain. And this one, of course, has a little more bedazzling happening for the handle. They aren't identical, but I guess I would still consider them to be a pair. So those are the weapons that come included with them. Then they get a bunch of hands. Now, if you look on this side and you look on this side, either way, you're not probably going to see hands. But if whatever I show you on this side would basically be mirror flipped on the other side for the other figure. So both the figures get these hands. That's basically what I'm trying to tell you. One pair is just a pair of flat karate chopping hands. You can see right there. And just to show you, I'm going to grab the other one that comes included with Oroku Saki. I don't think I would necessarily say, yeah, this one is specifically for Hamato Yoshi, this one's specifically for Oroku Saki. They both get the same pairs of hands. And then the other hands, of course, because right now these figures only have closed fists in the sockets of their forearms, they also get a pair of gripping hands. Of course, for all those weapons we just finished having a look at in pairs, they come with, of course, the suitable gripping hands for the job. And again, each of the figures, you get some, everybody gets the same pairs of hands. So two of these. I think I've clarified that enough by now. Then, of course, we can kind of talk about, you know what, before we actually look at like the gis and how you can change those out, the last thing, of course, that comes included with Hamato Yoshi is the stand. And then to go along with the stand is the little cage that the pet Splinter will go inside of. And you do get two variations of the Splinter. It's a nice cage, and as you can see, there's a little loop on the top, and that just hooks onto the top, just like that. And you've got yourself the dangling cage like it was in the 1990 movie. Now, of course, right now, there's nothing inside the cage just yet, because you actually get two variations of Splinter. One is the Sparring Splinter, and you can kind of tell that it's the Sparring Splinter by the way he's posed, and also the fact he still has both ears intact. It's a little small representation of Splinter. You can see he's sparring away there. I kind of really have to question how smart a rat would know to be able to spar and learn martial arts, but I digress. We're talking about mutant turtles after all. And then there's this version of Splinter where you can sort of see he's already suffered the blade of Oroku Saki. You can see the one side he is actually missing the ear. Again, the attention to detail, the fact that they would actually give you two versions of Splinter, one with the notable missing ear, fantastic on NECA's part. Now, both the figures actually do have peg holes on the underside in the most inappropriate place, I guess, but at least it allows the little tiny splinters to attach to the cage. All you're going to do is just attach this. Go to the bottom of the cage, and there's a little lip right here. You can kind of get your finger underneath there. It's not difficult at all. The thing you really do want to do is not squeeze this while holding on to it. Sort of just pop that off. I'll have to go back and retrieve that inside. Actually, you know what? Let's retrieve it. Let's retrieve that now, because of course I'm going to have to need it. You'll see on the bottom of the base, the bottom of the cage, there's that hole, that peg. Well, that will attach to the inconvenient placing of the hole on the bottom of Splinter. You just wiggle the figure onto it, and you attach them to the display stand. It doesn't feel like it goes all the way in, but it goes more than enough to keep it at least in place. And then from there, you're just going to go ahead and take the top of the cage and fit it down. And just kind of push down just a little bit of pressure, and you can get the little Splinter inside the cage. You could technically do it as well with this Splinter, but being that he's already missing the ear, even though they have taken the time and put the hole on the bottom of his behind, under where his behind would be, I probably would not end up displaying this Splinter inside the cage. I would instead go with the one that's sparring myself. And then again, that just hooks right onto the handle like that. And then you've got Splinter inside the cage sparring along with Hamato Yoshi. So for the looks of these two characters, you have Hamato Yoshi with a partial gi with only his lower pants, and you have Oroku Saki with a full gi complete with robe. You can take the look that you're looking at right now and flip it for the other figure. And what do I mean by that? Hamato Yoshi comes with part of the gi. That's the part, of course, that Oroku Saki is currently wearing. And this fits over top of his torso. Now what you're thinking, well, wait a minute, you'd still have the bare arms. No, NECA thought of that. They actually include extra additional arm pieces of the gi that you can swap out. Before we swap that out, I just want to first pick up Hamato Yoshi, and I want to show you guys what he looks like up close like this. We don't have really a lot of source material to pull this from because the clip, the flashback is so short, and you see so little of Hamato Yoshi and Oroku Saki. But I will say, though, that's a great looking head sculpt. See, up close and personal. Not only is the sculpt really good, but the paint is fantastic on this. It actually kind of looks like he's got the starting of a growing mustache coming in there. Now, Hamato Yoshi only comes with the one face sculpt. Oroku Saki, on the other hand, comes with two, and you probably already know what the other one's going to be. The sculpting on the chest is, again, fantastic. It's really a shame that NECA doesn't have a license for Bruce Lee, because basing it from the frame that they've got for just the torso, I think that could make for a really good Bruce Lee figure. Anyways, he does have the guards there on his arms, and the same thing will apply for Oroku Saki when we swap things out on him. And of course, he's got the lower half of the gi, which is just the pants with the sashed belt. I'm really impressed with the paint because, again, we don't have a lot to really compare it against because that flashback scene happens so quickly, and most of the scene is low lit. So again, you really don't see a lot of their faces. Now, to swap out, if we're going to go ahead and take the time and put the gi onto him, there's a couple things you're going to have to remove. You're going to have to remove his arms, and of course, you're going to have to remove Yoshi's head. Basically, decapitate the arms, well, decapitate the head and remove and yank the arms out. The arms aren't super difficult either to remove. I found if you just held on to the torso, bring the arm up a little bit and just wiggle it back and forth. The first time may seem a little tighter, but every time after that, it seems quite easy to remove this. And you just literally pop the peg out from the hole and do the exact same thing on the other side. I'm sorry, Yoshi, I have to remove your arms for a second. Go ahead and do the exact same thing on the other side and just wiggle it right out. If you're having any difficulty, by the way, doing what I've just done, take a hairdryer. You can heat up this area around the socket just to soften up the plastic a little bit. You could technically as well submerge the figure in water, but I don't really like to do that all the times, especially if it's going to be like a main torso piece. If it's for a smaller hand or an arm where, I guess I could only put one, I guess you could do it that way. But I find sometimes the hairdryer to be a more effective route of changing out arms and changing out heads. Speaking of heads, again, we're going to have to decapitate Hamato Yoshi's head sculpt one last time looking at it. Really happy with both of these. Both of these head sculpts are really good on these figures. But we're going to go ahead and just pop the head off the ball peg. And once that's all good, then we're going to go ahead and take the top of the gi, and we're going to slide it over top of his body. Now, before I'm doing it, it looks kind of awkward, kind of when a kid's getting dressed and their shirt gets stuck on their head and they can't get it off and they're sort of walking around. Maybe my daughter's the only one that does that. One thing I will say, though, is that the torso is painted rather nicely. I worry, though, about the plastic being black on the inside like this, that one of two things could happen. It could either wear the paint that's on the existing painted torso, or it could leave some of the black plastic rubbed off onto the plastic of the torso. For that reason, I would probably say decide for yourself how many times, which way you want to display the figure, and maybe only do that a couple of times after that. I think for Hamato Yoshi, even though I'm doing it right now for this review, I'm probably going to have him displayed with the gi top off, the gi robe off. And I think I'll probably just keep the gi on Oroku Saki. But I'm just doing this right now to show you guys what it looks like. It's a very tight fit, and you sort of can feel friction working against you. And just slide that over top of his body. You can already see it's going to work to be a mirror copy of Oroku Saki. And then from there, instead of using these arms, you're going to go ahead and use these arms. And I've already taken the liberty of adding the flatter hand to both the arms. You're just going to plug this into place. And again, if you have any difficulty doing this, heat the joint up. There we go. There's the one. I found actually of the two arms, these arms right here, this joint was a much tighter joint, at least for bending it back and forth. So I think if I do decide I want to keep these arms intact or in place, instead of it looking like he's Mr. Roboto, I might actually just heat. Now this would be a case where I would put that in hot water and just soften up that joint a little bit, because it is a really tight joint. And then from there we can go ahead and finish up the look by putting the head back onto the peg. Short of the fact he is doing the robot, that's what Hamato Yoshi looks like. And again, when you put him right next to Oroku Saki, you can pretty much see that NECA Toys have just reused the same body, which is, again, fine, because then you can take the look of Oroku Saki and you're basically just doing the exact same thing. I'm not going to do it just because it's going to give you essentially, like if okay, we'll go ahead and remove the arms anyways. Saki's arms, actually, comparing the two, were a little more difficult to remove. There you go. There's the one. And we'll do the exact same thing on the other side. There we go. That one's a lot easier. Again, removing the head. And we'll just slide this right off. I have done this less times with Oroku Saki than I did with Hamato Yoshi. But again, you're basically just going to wiggle this off the torso. And it helps actually if you kind of rock it back and forth while you're trying to remove it. Again, it's a bit of a tighter grip, tighter fit. There we go. I don't know if you can actually see it right there, but Oroku Saki, because he already had the gi robe on his torso, I have this little mark right here. And it's not going to be, I'm sure, on every single figure, but I do want to point out that it's on mine. It could be what was left from the plastic. You can probably see a little more of that plastic rub here on the side. It's a shame because he actually comes packaged, with the gi robe. I think he was more susceptible to leaving some of the stain behind. You could always go the route, really, because they are using the exact same figure. After all, I mean, again, when you're looking at it from head to toe, it's the same figure. If you don't like the idea that this one does have a little more of the staining, just decide which character you want to display shirtless, and then just pop the head off, you know. And so if obviously you want to go, say, Oroku Saki with the head sculpt on the bare chest, then just use that body, and then just keep the gi on this one instead. But then again, we're going to go ahead and take now Oroku Saki. I want to show you his arms. His arms are basically going to be the exact same as Hamato Yoshi's. And because these ones already have the arms, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to literally use Oroku Saki's, Hamato Yoshi, I should say, his existing arms. I'm going to plug those into place. There's the one. We'll do the exact same thing on the other side. And you can already see what I mean. Like it's literally the exact same figure. Just one is with the gi robe, one is without the gi robe. And of course, one is missing the head as well. So let's go ahead and take Oroku Saki's head, put it back onto the ball peg. There we go. And this is what Oroku Saki looks like without the gi robe. For my own personal displays, I'm going to stick, I think, with the way the figures came out of the packaging. Keep Oroku Saki with the gi robe, keep Hamato Yoshi without the robe. But certainly, while I do have Oroku Saki here, we can show you guys. I'll show you guys the difference of the two heads. Seems like such a more happier Saki. I don't really want to display him like that. Instead, I think most people are probably going to decide to display Oroku Saki with the scratch on his face. Of course, caused by the, I don't want to say the hands, but the paws of Splinter. And to change out the head, just pop this off and replace it with the scratched face. The neat thing about the scratched face, though, if I can get that actually onto the ball peg, there we go. The neat thing about this is if you take the Splinter, Splinter is curved in such a way. Now, again, this is the Splinter that's got the severed ear. But he's curved like this also for a reason, because you can kind of latch it onto Saki's face. And I find it helps if you take the tail and just kind of get the tail underneath the chin. And it gives you just a little bit of stabilizing. Now, you can also bring the head down a little bit. It doesn't really clip in place necessarily, nor is it really frictioned. So you sort of have to just rest it. You can kind of get, like I said, the tail sometimes if you tuck it underneath the chin, although it looks like his chin's now stuck inside of Saki. But the idea is it's supposed to really attach to the side of Oroku Saki's face, like he's actually scratching Saki's face. And it doesn't do the greatest of job unless you have the gi robe back on. And because the gi has that little lip of the collar, you end up being able to rest Splinter's body really against it, and it kind of gives you a little bit of additional lift. I guess it probably would make more sense to put him back with the robe so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Getting the gi, though, back onto Oroku Saki's torso, you can really see that it's doing most, if not all, the work of keeping the Splinter accessory attached to his face. Because if not for that, this little strap of the side of his collar, that's really, again, the thing that's holding the rat, because the rat's basically just sitting against that collar. It sort of helps as well if I spin this around so you can kind of see. If you get it really close to his ear, it also seems to be a good place. Again, it's more balancing than anything else. you'll know that when you get this figure, if you get it into the right place on him, he stays there. It's just a matter of finding that right sweet spot of actually getting Splinter attached to his face. And again, it doesn't really attach as much as it's sort of just resting and getting everything lined up appropriately. One thing that NECA could have also done as well, going back to the idea that Splinter does have a hole after all in the underside of his belly like this, is that they could have actually released the figure with a little, like an L bracket. The part of that plastic would have fit underneath the collar of his gi, and it would have just shot up. It would have looked like the letter L, essentially. And then the top of that could have plugged onto Splinter, where you could have actually had it permanently attached like this. Again, it would have just been like a little L bracket that could have fit just underneath the robe. That's one workaround that they could have done. Not for that, again, it's just a balancing act, really, of getting Splinter just right to attach to the side of his face. Speaking of his face, again, we'll get one last look at Oroku Saki's face. I love the gash that they put to the side of it. And in case you're curious, we can bring in the original Shredder figure. Let's go ahead and do the reveal here of removing his mouth plate. And just wiggle that off. And you can see there's the gash, there's the scratch on the side of his face. The coloring between the two figures, notably, isn't the same. It's a little more yellowish, I would say, on the Oroku Saki standalone figure, and a more pinker color when we look at the standalone Shredder. That's the only thing, unfortunately, that's jarring between the two. I wish that the color matched a little bit more so that they were a little more closer to looking like at least they could be the exact same figure. Anyways, we're going to go ahead and put the mouth guard back onto Shredder's face. Just line up everything on. There we go. Snap it back into place. Yeah, the skin tone is definitely very visibly different between the two figures. We'll move Shredder out of the way. We certainly have looked at that figure enough times over the last years that they've been releasing that figure in countless different releases. Let's have a look, though, at the articulation here on Oroku Saki. Now, we're going to stick with Oroku Saki because essentially he's the same as Mr. Roboto here. He looks a little awkward, yes, with his arms like this, but it's basically going to be the exact same figure. So we'll look at the articulation here on Oroku Saki, and it basically will just carry over to Hamato Yoshi. So look at the articulation here on Oroku Saki. His head rotates all the way around. On that ball joint, after all, it hinges up, it hinges down, and you can also move it back and forth as well. Being that they're both currently wearing gis, it's going to limit a little more of the articulation, but they did have, and still do have, articulation in the upper torso. You can rotate that all the way around. The arms on both the figures hinge out, although you do get more of the mileage, I feel, when you have the robe off. You can get them right now at about a 45-degree angle bend. You can rotate the arms all the way around. He has a double hinge on the elbow. And you can rotate the hands all the way around. And actually as well, you can rotate at the elbow area as well. You can rotate that back and forth too. For the legs split out. And there is actually a cut on the side of the robe that does help a little bit to allow the legs to hinge a much greater range of motion. We can move those out like this. Legs go forward, the legs go back. There is a swivel at the top where that attaches to the ball peg. There is a double hinge on the knee. It's strange the way they've done the joint because when you're looking at it, the top of the joint is actually part of like the little flap piece that hangs down. But then there's a secondary ball joint or secondary hinge joint where it looks like just a regular straight hinge. See, hopefully you can see what I'm talking about there. And then, of course, when it comes to his feet, and that's the case with both of them, they hinge up and down, and you can also rock them back and forth as well. There's what it looks like on the under sculpting of the feet. Both the figures actually do have peg holes, even though these figures don't come included with display stands. Really, really nice looking figures. I mean, this would be one of those cases where I really wasn't expecting them to release a Oroku Saki Hamato Yoshi 2-pack. I mean, it's certainly always one of those dream figures, being that they've already been covering off so many of the main characters from the 1990 TMNT film. The idea of getting a Oroku Saki and Hamato Yoshi, again, far-fetched of a concept, and yet NECA, as you can see, really made it happen. And in case you are curious, yes, you can use either one of the splinters to attach to Oroku Saki's face. To be fair, though, the back of the packaging does have the taller, standing upright Sparring Splinter, the one that's lunging into Oroku Saki's face. I ended up using the other one. I guess you could say that the other one isn't right anyways because it already has the cut-off ear. That would have happened after he scratched up Saki's face. I like the other one more so because it looks like he's leaning into his face, whereas this one looks like he's sort of punching his face. Either way, though, you can use either one of the splinters. It's all a matter of balancing them and getting them just right. Again, I kind of would have liked if they had put like a little bracket, something I mentioned in this review, that would have fit underneath the Saki's robe so you would have never seen it, and a little peg that stuck up where you could attach either one of Splinter's, because after all, they do have holes on the bottoms of their bellies, kind of in their behinds. Either way, though, nice looking set. Both Oroku Saki and Hamato Yoshi, even though technically they are using the same molds, changing out the gis so that one has the gi, one doesn't have the gi. And I'm probably going to stick with having Saki with the gi, Yoshi without the gi. You can mix and match them, and you can have them looking like two distinctly different characters, even though they're using the same mold. The only other thing I wish this set could have come packaged with, and this sort of lends itself to final looks here, is I've got Oroku Saki holding the katana in one of his hands, and then the other hand is sort of flailing around as, of course, Splinter's lunging into his face. I wish that they had given him some sort of gestured hands, so it wasn't just closed fists, grabbing, gripping hands, and then sort of that flat hand. I wish there was something like a gestured, like extended fingers, so it looked like he was trying to grab Splinter instead of just giving him flat palms. I'm sure I could probably find that from another figure that they've released, but it would have been nice if this set could have also included more, gestured hands than just a flat hand. Other than that, though, I'm really happy with how this set turned out. Again, I really wasn't expecting at all to get an Oroku Saki and a Hamato Yoshi from the 1990 classic Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle film, but NECA made it happen, and they did such a great job with this release. What do you guys think of the set? Let me know down below if you've managed to pick it up for yourself, or just based on this review and this review alone. I'd also like to thank the folks over at NECA Toys for providing this sample of Oroku Saki and Hamato Yoshi that we could have a look at in this review. If you are new to this channel, if you're enjoying all the content you're seeing, and especially like this video, hit this video with a like and make sure you're hitting the subscribe button so that you're always in the know when new NECA reviews are lined up. And of course, you can also turn that bell notification on to again give those friendly reminders to YouTube that yes, you want to see more content that's coming onto this channel. And in fact, we are going to be looking at even more NECA reviews in the not so distant future. So make sure you keep your peepers peeled to this channel. And as always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.